Babylon, we've all heard about Babylon, how they were destroyed in the past. Babylon. What a lot of people don't realize is that Babylon was the hammer of God for a time. Back in the day when Nimrod basically built Babylon, he also created the Tower of Babel. They figured they wanted to be close to the Lord, to be like the Lord. So they built this. They built the Tower of Babel, and he also built a ton of other cities, right? But the biggest problem was when God would send them out as his hammer to do his due diligence, to do what they're supposed to do, they would go a little overboard, right? And so we see this pattern going on, right? Babylon was God's hammer. It was used as a tool to chasing God's people. Every generation of Babylon was built big and extravagant at every advent. And every advent got too big for its britches. Pride and greed came into the picture. First, it was Nimrod. That was his situation. We all talk about King Nebuchadnezzar. That was his situation. He got too big for his britches. Daniel had to tell him what was going on. God gave him visions. He started to list the visions in the end, and in the end, he was somewhat saved in that manner. His son Belshazzar, however, wasn't listening, and so he felt the full effect of it, right? And then you have another type, a Roman version of a type of Babylon, which was Alexander the Great, and eventually the Antichrist. And before we go there, I'm going to read Revelation chapter 17. But the reason why I say this is we all talk about Babylon. We talk about how America could be Babylon the Great, and where is America's place in Bible prophecy, right? There's a lot of correlation, a lot of similarities between Nimrod's Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon, and the mystery of Babylon mentioned in the book of Revelation. So if everyone could turn to Revelation chapter 17, I'm going to read verses 1 through 7, and then I'm going to skip to 15 through 18. The reason why I'm doing that, the verses in between is going to cause a lot of confusion, and it's not necessary for what we're talking about at the very moment. But if you could turn to Revelation chapter 17, I'm going to begin at verse 1 in just a moment. Revelation 17, verse 1, Babylon, the prostitute on the beast. One of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. With her, the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names, and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes, and of the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I'll explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns." Now we're going to skip ahead to verse 15. The angel said to me, "The waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute." Let me say it one more time. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into her hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Stop right there for a second. I'm going to go back. When it talks about the beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute, if you notice in the beginning of the chapter, it talks about the prostitute that sits on this beast, right? The beast has 10 horns. These 10 horns are basically for kings that have not reigned yet. That's for a latter date, for the last days. Now, going to chapter 18, it says, "After this, I saw an angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. With a mighty voice, he shouted, 'Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons and a haunt for every impure spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable animal. For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries.' Warning to escape Babylon's judgment. Then I heard another voice from heaven say, 'Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins. so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Give back to her as she has given, pay her back double for what she has done. For her double portion from her own cup, give her as much torment and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. In the heart she boasts, I sit enthroned as a queen. I am not a widow. I will never mourn. Therefore, in one day, her plagues will overtake her: death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her. Therefore, woe over Babylon's fall, threefold, when the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her. Terrified at her torment, they will stand far off and cry, woe, woe to you, great city, my city of Babylon. In 1 hour your doom has come. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her because no one buys her cargoes anymore. Cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, and scarlet cloth. Every sort of citron wood and articles of every kind made of ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, marble, cargoes of cinnamon and spice, of incense and myrrh and frankincense, of wine and olive oil, of fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and carriages, and human beings sold as slaves. They will say, the fruit you longed for is gone from you. All your luxury and splendor have vanished, never to be recovered. The merchants who sold these things and gained their wealth from her will stand far off, terrified at her torment. They will weep and mourn and cry out, woe, woe to you, great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. In 1 hour, such great wealth has been brought to ruin. Every sea captain and all who travel by the ship, the sailors and all who earn their living from the sea will stand far off when they see the smoke of her burning. I'm going to say it one more time. Every sea captain and all who travel by ship, the sailors and all who earn their living from the sea will stand far off when they see the smoke of her burning. They will exclaim, was there ever a city like this great city? They will throw dust off on their heads, and with weeping and mourning cry out, woe, woe to you, great city, where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. In 1 hour she has been brought to ruin. Rejoice over her, you heavens, rejoice, you people of God, rejoice, apostles and prophets, for God has judged her with the judgment she imposed on you. The finality of Babylon's doom. Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea, and said, with such violence, the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again. The music of harpists and musicians and pipers and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. No worker of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's important people. By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray. In her was found the blood of prophets and of God's holy people, of all who have been slaughtered on the earth. So, as you can see, destruction is coming. But if you look at Revelations chapter 17, verse 18, and the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. This statement right there establishes that the prostitute is a political entity, not just a religious one. Babylon the Great is a world hegemon, a superpower that dominates world politics, economics, and culture in the last days. But what does she look like? Before I flip the screen, I can tell you right now, when it says a world hegemon, a superpower that dominates world politics, economics, and culture in the last days, that's been America for quite a while now. But it's fading fast. What does she look like? This entity reigns over the kings of the earth, sits on many waters, adorned with purple and scarlet, blue and red. Drunk with the blood of saints and martyrs, she glorified herself and lived luxuriously. Merchants of the world get rich through the abundance of her luxury. When there are talks of kings in this chapter, the woman on the scarlet beast is not referred to as one of the final kings. She sits on the beast shortly before destruction. Revelation 17, verse 4, having in her hand a golden cup full of her abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. When a godly nation becomes anything but godly, that's fornication. And that's what he's referring to. When we look in this world today, what we see is the breakdown of the family unit. We see the demasculinization of the man, the hunter-gatherer that was the head of the house. there's a rise in immorality. The moral decay is just pervasive. So if you look at the world right now, you can tell darkness is becoming emboldened, weakness is growing, and that's what the word Bible said what the world will be like in the last days. So you heard from Kamara earlier talking about political turmoil, the Democrats and Republicans, and she was dead on what's going on. Ms. Gross said, "What do you think is going to happen in a couple of months?" And if I was asked the question, I could tell you, I think they're going to let the government shut down. Reason being is because right now you have people in power and other people that are trying to gain more power, battling back and forth, trying to gain the upper hand. And then you have the Democrats and Republicans that are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You have a Republican that basically got with the Democrats to get a deal done so they could push things off, keep the government running for a while, and then they upended him and got him out of his position. Now, that's not some mean, evil, hateful stuff, but what it is he's affecting what they're trying to do. Apparently, somebody wanted the shutdown to happen so that they can allow certain other things to happen. Maybe it's going to be more money. Maybe it's going to move things along and get us closer to those last days. But you see a lot of political turmoil going on right now. And not just here. You're seeing uprisings all over the world. You're seeing all over Africa and South America, even in the Baltic states, whatnot. You're looking at, we talked about the heifers in Israel. We know that in order for one of the biggest things about the last days is that King Solomon's temple will be rebuilt a third time. We know that has not been built yet, but we know that they're in preparation for it, right? Well, these heifers are key to that because during this time frame, they reinstitute temple sacrifice. We talked about it before. I mentioned this to our pastor just a while ago, how these red heifers were moved from Texas to Israel. Now, mind you, there has not been a red heifer on this planet in over 2,000 years until recently, until 2006, right? And since then, you saw a little more something happen. And then they actually were able to have some successful red heifers that are bred unblemished, and then they shipped them over to Israel. Now they have calves coming that will be used for temple sacrifice in 2024. The Sanhedrin, which is the High Jewish Council, and the council of the 70 most highest prominent people in Judaism right now in Israel, all got together and they looked over the blueprint for the building of the third temple. What they had was a model sitting on a table. I wish I had this picture put together, but I'm gonna get it together. I'm gonna put it in there for you. Put it in our text group, whatnot. But they're looking at the model of how this temple is going to look, and it's crazy. It's a 3D model on across the table. You see all these big wigs from over there, and I said, man, this is really happening. They have the heifers there. Now, the heifers is critically important because the Bible clearly states, going back to the Old Testament, you can't have temple sacrifice in Israel. You can't just sacrifice any animal. It has to be a pure, unblemished red heifer, not a spot. Ain't been one in a couple thousand years until recently. So now the other thing is they have to be less than a year old, which means the ones we sent over there aren't even the ones they're going to be using, which means they're taking the ones that we sent over there to breed more. Or we sent over one that was really, really young. Well, the ones I know about, I didn't know that they were small. I figured they were heifer size. So continuing on to not keep going, we talked a few months ago about the Great Reset. Right now, you have this thing. I want you all to, when you get time, Google the Great Reset. There's a ton of global elitists right now that are pushing this agenda, a reset of the world, a reset of how we do things and making this world a mecca, a paradise. But certain things have to happen in order to make that happen. Like, getting rid of 70% of the people on the planet because there's too many people on the planet, according to them. This Great Reset is real. They're pushing this agenda right now. Weather patterns gone wild. We've already seen what's going on with the hurricanes, the storms. Right now, the Midwest is about to catch some more storms and whatnot. It's crazy what's going on. How it was just cold here last week, and now it's going to be 80 and almost 90 degrees coming up. We've had hurricane after hurricane, major hurricanes, more than 2 or 3 at the same time in the Atlantic, which is unprecedented. Powerful storms. We know that global warming is happening, and we know that this is a part of God's plan. So when we see all these things happening, we have to realize, it's about that time. Going on to the next topic, decline of morality. June was originally the month that they used to honor marriage, honor the sanctity of marriage between a man and a woman ordained by God. Now it's Gay Pride Month. Go figure. Sexual perversion revolution. There's a revolution going on right now of sexual perversion that is unbelievable. I don't know how much of you guys really know about this, but people getting in so much perversion these days is ridiculous, from furries and bestiality and animals to just horrendous types of cosplay that are animal centered. It's an unnatural use of the body, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And Kamara can tell you, she just told you about what happened. You know, one of the members of the government that or the mayor that was dealing with the children when I. Well, that's happening a lot. More and more videos and statements are coming out right now about powerful people in politics and business secretly engaging in ungodly acts, homosexuality, LGBTQ, dealing with children, and things of that nature. This is happening at an unprecedented level. Destruction of family unit, killing of the man, the hunter-gatherer. The man was always the head of the household, the hunter-gatherer. If you take the hunter-gatherer out of the family, what happens when the family cannot go to the grocery store to get food? What happens when the family has to go find a way to survive and find shelter? If you don't have a hunter-gatherer in the family, you don't have a way to survive. They effectively have taken that out of the family union when they demasculate the men. And then they have us focus on other things other than what's most important, taking care of our families, being a man. When I look at Lucas, I see a man who spent his life serving his country. And when we ask him to do something, ain't no problem with it. He gonna handle it. Whatever he's supposed to do, he gonna do it to the T without a problem. He gonna handle it. There's not a lot of men like that nowadays. If everything shut down tomorrow and we lost electricity and we had to fend for ourselves, people like Lucas would be able to survive. Why? Because they still have that hunter-gatherer instinct in them because he was raised with that. This younger generation does not have that. A lot of people from my generation going on down don't have it or are losing that and getting away from it. And it's something that we need to have because if the men can't protect the women, they can't take care of the family, who's going to protect the country? Chirac. I pushed Chirac because I got into looking at the violence levels and how much the violence has increased. And there's just tons of videos on social media all over TikTok and YouTube about all the violence in Chirac where you can't go down the block. It's worse than Compton was 20 years ago. I mean, it's wow. And it's not just in Chicago. Chicago's where you see the most, but it's happening in Little Rock. It's happening in the smaller cities. People cannot go places anymore because they don't feel safe. You go to a mall, you got 100 kids running there robbing a place with no sense of identity, with no sense of consciousness. These things are happening for a reason. And I put Matthew 24, verse 9. I'm going to go there real quick. If y'all want to go there with me, let's go. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them. I have no problem answering any questions right now. Matthew 24, verses 9 and 10. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Wait a minute, that's what I was looking for. Oh yeah, yep. Actually, it's verse 12. Many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. In verse 12, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. And we see that happening on an unprecedented level right now. If you look at how things were 4 or 5 years ago, right before COVID, you didn't see the things happening that you see happening today. People are out of control. The world's out of control. Population control. We already talked about that. The Great Reset. The global elitists, they want to control the population. And there's lots of ways they talked about that they could do this. And there's lots of ways that we've heard they want to do this that's not being talked about in public. But sickness and disease is one of the main ones. Pestilences. Like, what are they doing to the food? We talked about the different things in their food. We talked about how you have all these different impurities in food. And now all of a sudden people are having different health issues now at younger ages they never had before. That's crazy. But that, once again, it's another sign of evidence. Electric everything. California is trying to go electric with every vehicle by 2030. They want to have by 2030. They would not like to have any more gas vehicles on the road. The push is that eventually the whole country will be basically operating on electricity and it'll be more efficient. Problem is, what happens when they turn the lights out? If your whole house and your vehicles and everything you use is operating on an electrical grid, then they have control and they have power. Because if they turn off your power, you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. It's another system of control. Aliens and demons. You've heard a lot of conversations about aliens right now. A lot of conversations, more than ever before. Reason being is because when the rapture happens, they're going to need an excuse and a reason. And aliens is a very prominent reason. The thing is, I'm not saying that aliens exist. I'm not saying they don't exist. I don't know. That ain't my place to know. The Bible says he created the worlds, plural. God created the worlds. So whatever created, he created. But I do know that there are demons. And we do know demons walk this earth. And we do know people have demons in them. And we know demons can move and do different things, right? I am a firm believer, and this is my opinion, but based on what I've been seeing, I believe, and a lot of the people believe this too, that they're going to be using, when the rapture happens, they're going to blame it on aliens. When they see demons, you see demonic activity, they're going to use that as a whole alien thing. Of course, they have AI and everything else where they can make up pictures and things of that nature and build these robots that look like aliens. But I believe a lot of demonic activity is going to go along with that. And getting into that, not too far, but if you're looking at AI and robots that think, and then getting into DNA and creating beings and trying to make a being and whatnot, God is a creator. So if you're creating something, how can you create something? How can you make a soul if you're not God? Because that's what I'm getting at. Transgender legislation is everywhere. They're pushing it. There's a huge push all over America, and the push over America is much stronger than elsewhere. And in fact, in Europe, it's more accepted, but it's also more common. But the push of acceptance has not been like it's in America anywhere else across this planet. And what do? We export our lifestyle to the world. We've been doing that for decades. That's what we do. That's why America's been so big and popular. We talked about more and more videos and statements about powerful people in politics and business secretly engaging in ungodly acts. I'm not going to get in that too far because it gets real deep. But people often say, well, that's what's going to happen during the tribulation period. We'll be gone by then. But in theory, yes, we will go in the rapture. However, no one knows if the rapture will happen on day 1 or day 157 of the tribulation period. No one knows. We have an idea of the time frame based on what the Bible says, but the Bible does say we will suffer for his name's sake. So we ought to be prepared. So we see these things happen, and we see the rise of immorality, the moral decay. We see how Russia and China have just made an agreement to work together on pretty much everything, especially protection and arms. When you hear about Russia, who right now is getting ready to test fire another missile, when you see Russia saying, if the United States does anything else or puts any more bases over there in the area, if we help Ukraine out with any more strong arms, they're going to have a problem. When you see China saying, if we do anything else to help Taiwan, they're going to have a problem with us. When you see these people saying they're going to use nuclear weapons and they're not afraid to use it, believe it. When it talks about, the Bible says greed and power, greed and pride are going to be the biggest downfall of the world today. That's what you're seeing. Greed and greed and pride on a whole nother level. And so we all need to be prepared for what's coming, because the Bible states we won't know when it's near. We'll know the coming based on the signs. We won't know when it's happened, but we don't want to be left behind. We don't want to be left hanging. And furthermore, while we're waiting on the rapture to happen, we don't want to get caught in the trick bag dealing with all this stuff, because the things are going to happen during the tribulation period. The one world government, the new world order, those things are taking place right now. They talk about the mark of the beast. I didn't get a chance to put this in the slideshow, but which is why I want to speak again next month if Pastor will allow me to. But they've gone so much further in that area with the mark of the beast. Right now, you have the real life technology to successfully put a mark of the beast in every single person on the earth and track their progress and track everything about them. We didn't have that 10 years ago. We didn't have that 100 years ago. Today, they have that. They have the capability to put the image of the beast in every single household in 3D and 4D. We didn't have that 10 years ago. We have that today. So when you see all these things coming and happening, look up, for the coming of the Son of Man is near. How I'm doing on time?
Keep going. You're fine.
Oh, all right. So getting back into the reason why I went back to Babylon was because we talk about Babylon the Great, we talk about America, and let's face it, we all here have to protect our families. We have to look out for each other, right? So that's why I believe God brought me back to this, because we need to be prepared for what's going on. We as America, we were the hammer of God for a long time. We were the ones that backed Israel. That changed not too long ago. And that's one of the things that says, once again, it reminds me of Babylon. Nimrod did the Tower of Babel. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. In the city Shinar, he built Babylon. He built Nineveh in Assyria. He built a ton of cities. He built Rezin, which is a city between Nineveh and Calah. All these great cities, right? But then his pride got too big and he wanted to be like God and he had to fall. Babylon is a symbol of rebellion against God. So then you have Nebuchadnezzar that had the same situation, and Alexander the Great that had the same situation. Now look at the United, and they all tried to usurp God. They all tried to usurp God. And now you see the United States. And now, what I did not get a chance, another thing I didn't get a chance to put in here, uh, United States is, we all know this, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, right? We were founded as one nation under God. Regardless of what the ideology may have been of the people at that time, we as Americans, we know it's always been one nation under God. However, they took out the equation. You take out the equation, now you got a problem. With liberty and justice for all, so whose liberty is being taken right now and who's being unjustly treated? God says, what you do to the least of my brethren, what you do to the least of my children, you do unto me. God also says, vengeance is mine. So my next question is, what happens when vengeance comes upon a nation of people? That's my question. Because we have been in a position for a long time to be blessed and be a blessing to other people and other nations. We flipped the script and changed it and went the complete other direction. That right there is yes, my Lord, that right there is a problem. And not only do we go the other direction, but we're exporting this stuff to the rest of the world. So basically, we went from being a servant of God to being a servant of the enemy. And the bill's about to come due on that. They were, yeah. Did I miss anything? Latter days, falling back on the great split. Yeah, okay. I think I went over everything that I wanted to go through in this particular message. Oh, Revelation. Oh, I did. So some of y'all should know who Wu-Tang Clan is, right? Some anybody that's, they're over, my age range. We know Wu-Tang Clan from when we were younger as a rap group, right? But they had the song called Cream. Cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, y'all. But Cream, CREAM, was cash rules everything around me. Babylon the Great is a heavy commercial hub, right? Cream is the motto of Babylon the Great. Cash is ruling everything. But if you put cash in place, you're taking God out of place. So Babylon the Great being where the traders that buy and sell goods, the traders become affected by her destruction, right? In Revelation 16 through 18, you see a lot of corruption. And so, hold on, let me go there real quick, because there's another part of the message I had right there. Actually, any questions so far?
Oh, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, great lesson.
Thank you, thank you. That ain't me, that's him all day. Oh, you know what? I'm not gonna go through 16 verse 18. Okay, I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but Revelation 16 through 18 talks about God's wrath and Babylon and whatnot, and the prostitute. And basically, we talked about how they traded God, the world, we traded God for Satan, or serving God for serving the world and whatnot. But Babylon in its time frame right now being corrupt and corrupting, materialism has replaced morality. Pleasure has replaced purity. Wealth has replaced wisdom, and lust has replaced love. The American elite were rich as crap. They oppress God's people. Kings of the world are jealous about the earth, about what's going on in America. So they're going to plot our demise, which we see going on today. Politicians are hungry for power, CEOs, and lavish, kingly lifestyles. Lavish, kingly lifestyles. Think about how many of the top 1% live in America. Think about how many of our politicians and Fortune 500 CEOs. Now, politicians don't get paid a ton by the government. They all know how to make millions, right? And they live lavishly, right? And so you see all this stuff going on while their people are still poor and starving. When you see politicians hungry for power and greed, and CEOs living these lavish, kingly lifestyles, they make it very easy for the world to go haywire, for the people to rebel, and for somebody to come in peaceably and say, hey, calm down. I can unite the world. We shouldn't be fighting. We should all be together on one accord. They make it way too easy. These things will allow economic, like the politicians, and Kamara keyed on this in the very beginning. And when she said that, my ears perked up. But I put down that these will allow economic disasters social disasters, and geological disasters to happen, regardless of casualties, to get their desired end, which is domination, greed, and pride. The Bible talks about a city engulfed in flames when it talks about Babylon. A city engulfed in flames. Well, and it's, they say city, state. We talk about America, right? So America's Babylon. How do you engulf the entire country in flames? How is that possible? Or how is it possible for the majority of the country to be engulfed in flames to a point that it destroys the rest of the country? Because I would take the major cities like New York, DC, things of that nature. So then you had to get into what kind of events could happen that would make that happen, whether it's a nuclear attack, whether it's a dirty bomb from somebody here, whether it is a volcano in our own country that could darken the skies for a third of the day. All these things factor in right now. And all these things are possibilities for us in the very near future. And these are things we need to be paying attention, not to live in fear. So there's no fear in God, but to be aware and to make others aware so that they don't have to live in fear. They can live in joy and rejoice knowing that God is coming home. God is coming soon to take us all home. And I believe, oh,